Give Out But Don't Give Up was originally released as Primal Scream's fourth studio album in 1994. But today, Primal Scream and Sony are unveiling something quite special. It's a reissue with a twist, because it's not really a reissue, because the original mix was never really issued, except for now it's being issued. So the band originally recorded their album we're going to hear tonight with legendary producer Tom Dowd and Memphis recording studio Ardent. But they ended up re-recording and remixing and working with different producers and in different studios and adding tracks, and released an album that was very, very different to their original intention. Recently, Andrew Innes found the tapes to the original Memphis recordings of Give Out But Don't Give Up in his basement. We'll ask him what the hell they were doing there. And tonight, you guys are the lucky fans that are going to hear it for the very first time. So let's give a very big, soulful fan welcome to Bobby Gillespie, Andrew Innes, and Martin Duffy.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming along.
All right, so I'm going to rewind just a tiny bit for a short period, for a short second. I interviewed you guys when Screamadelica came out in 1991, which seems so long ago, because it was, I suppose. And then I interviewed you again a couple years later. You had just finished recording in Memphis. I remember you talking about Al Green and saying, I think you had seen Al Green. You were coming back up through New York. I hadn't heard any music yet because nothing had been sent to me. But I have to say, you seemed like a completely different band, that you were completely charged up. What was that experience like? Because right after you started recording, it just seemed like you were just so incredibly happy. Do you remember? They're trying to remember.
What record are we talking about? This one?
It's not my memories of the.
But Give
the
Out, Don't Give Up.
situation.
Yeah. So you had just done the studio. You had just recorded in the studio, and you
I
came
think
back
it
up
was
through New
probably
York.
more relief that we'd actually finished something and managed, because we'd been trying for about 9 months to make a record, and it hadn't gone very well, you know, and I think it was just relief, and probably we were on the way home, because I remember a lot of Memphis to me was, God, we've got to get this shit finished so we can just get home. Yeah. Even though, we're having a great time playing with great musicians, because we'd started trying to make the record in September the year before. So probably relief when we met you. Yeah.
Did you? What year did you meet us?
First time was 1991 or early 92.
Yeah, but around this Give It. Was it before the album was released or after?
Before.
All right.
Yeah, it was before you. I hadn't heard any music. It was literally, I got the call, hey, they're coming back up through New York. Why don't you do a quick interview with them? We don't know when they're coming back. So you guys were really charged up, and it almost seemed like you were a different band. It seemed like you were really,
probably
really
was a
happy.
different band.
You seem very happy. But it was surprising, because why did he decide to, Screamadelica was this massive success. Why did he decide to change the formula, in a sense? I mean, you could have just released something that was very much like Screamadelica, and instead you decided to do something very, very different. At least your original intention was to do something very different. Why was that?
Well, the songs that we were writing after touring Screamadelica were mainly ballads. Mm-hmm. The first two songs we had were Big Jet Plane and Everybody Needs Somebody. And they were mostly like kind of country soul, bluesy, very slow, sad ballads, dark ballads. And also Screamadelica, we had a great relationship with Andrew Weatherall, and dance music was everything. In music was moving very fast in those days, and Andy was getting more and more into like a deep, dark, European techno with not a lot of feeling, and we were getting more into sort of deep, southern country soul, and with a lot, hell of a lot of feeling, and so as I say, it was clear from the material that we were writing that it had to be recorded in a kind of conventional way, the old school way, playing live in the studio with 6 players, rather than the kind of remix, sample, breakbeat kind of sound collage thing that we had done with Andy and Alex Patterson on Screamadelica.
So when you told your label boss, Alan McGee, that you wanted to record in Memphis, what did he have to say?
I think he just wanted us to go and record anywhere. He
just get it done?
Yeah, he was more... And I think, everybody seemed to think if we went to Memphis, if we stayed in London, nothing would get done. If we went to New York or Los Angeles, we'd, find other things to do. And there's not a lot to do in Memphis, apart from make music.
So he was supportive of it.
Well, he didn't know who Tom Dowd was. This is Alan McGee, and he wanted us to record with George Draculius, who was having a lot of success with the Black Crows. And we listened to what George was doing with the Black Crows, and we admired it, but it sounded like he was recording a band, like a band playing live in the studio the way they would play live on stage. It was kind of 2 guitars, bass, drums.
So very raw.
Yeah, but very raw. But we wanted for this album we wanted sophisticated arrangements. And backing singers, horns, we loved Dusty in Memphis. We loved Elvis Presley's American studio recordings from Chris Spedding.
There you go. The motorcycle on cue. I had
More
that.
bacon. Mickey Mouse is trying to get in the act. And we loved Elvis's American studio recordings. Suspicious Minds, You Think of Me, Kentucky Rain, In the Ghetto, the stuff he'd done with Chips Mormon in Memphis, and that's I think what we were kind of looking for, rather than the kind of the rock thing. It was a kind of pop, soul, sophisticated adult production.
And as we're talking about National Album Day, what albums were you guys listening to? You mentioned Dusty in Memphis. You mentioned Elvis. What other albums were you listening to around this time?
I was listening to a lot, Buzz Scaggs, his first album, and also Willie Nelson, Phases and Stages, and Donnie Fritz, Prone to Lean. And the rhythm section on all those records was Roger Hawkins and David Hood. So that, plus loads of Aretha Franklin and lots of soul stuff. John, what were you guys?
When you're in Memphis, you can't but not appreciate what's in the water and in the air. And obviously you've got Elvis. So you can't not listen to Elvis. Jerry Lee Lewis, Stax.
All the Sun recordings.
All that stuff. I mean, you can't not be affected by it. So us going over there was just, it was a dream, a dream.
And Andrew, any other records you were listening to that haven't been mentioned?
I struggle with particular years. I couldn't put it.
Weren't you listening to loads of rap, hip hop and stuff? Far Side, no.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of that.
Crass.
Contemporary black music.
Well, Tom Dowd was a legendary engineer and producer who worked for Atlantic Records, recorded with Ray Charles, Ornette Coleman, John Coltrane, Aretha Franklin, the Coasters, the Drifters, Otis Redding. I mean, just it's an absolute legend. What was it like working with him in the studio as opposed to, you'd been working before with Jimmy Miller and Andrew? What was it like working with Tom? Did he have a different methodology?
Tom was very, how would you say? He would keep. We rehearsed with Tom and the Muscle Shoals guys for a couple of weeks here in London. I think in April or May. Yeah, it was something, in the spring. And Tom, from the first day, was taking notes every time we played a song. And he would, he was very analytical. He would take a note about the how fast the song was, what the key was, the arrangements, what the bass was playing, what the guitars were playing. And then he would, for a few days he would do that, and then he would begin making suggestions. Why don't you, Andrew, try and cut the guitar right here in the verse. Martin, can you play something? Play it in this, range. I don't know. It was very. He was kind of like. He was quiet. He demanded a lot of respect, but in a quiet, cool way, because he was such a gentleman. Obviously, we were in awe of his, the things that he'd done during his career.
I think as well, the Roger and David were in awe of him as well, because they'd worked with him when they were 18 and made their first records with him. So I think he had that. He didn't need to demand respect. He just got it, because he was such a great man, and you knew that he'd seen everything. He'd worked with everybody in Atlantic since 1947. The guy had done everything. You just knew he knew what he's talking about, and he did. He had a background in physics when he was a kid, and he'd explain to you, he'd put your guitar amp on its back, and he'd explain why the waves that came off it, if you had it face down the ground, the waves would distort because they bounced off the floor before they hit the microphone. So he'd have your guitar amp flat on its back and suspend a microphone and record it that way. And he said this was, better. You get a better sound this way because of the laws of physics, and they wouldn't have interference in the waves bouncing off the floor. So you'd just be sitting there listening to this guy talk about it. And he worked in the Manhattan Project when he was a kid, which is the atomic bomb. So you're sitting with a guy who's...
But he didn't even know it was...
I mean, without sounding pretentious, his mathematics covered his soul. He had soul, but he was so mathematical in his approach, but he had so much soul, but it was almost, the soul wasn't as, I suppose, didn't stand out, because he was so intricate and mathematical.
Meticulous, maybe.
Yeah, meticulous, yeah, that's the word, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was all about feel. It's like, he said, I can sing that again better. And he go, no, it sounds great. Oh, there's a mistake in it. No, it sounds great, He was always about getting the right feel. And so, although I might say he was analytical, it was all for the better good, He was also very funky and knew when he'd captured the right take, And when everybody was grooving.
The intuition was I think was number one for him, the intuition.
That's great. I mean, he grew up in a musical family, so he would have that intuition kind of naturally, and also just not pursuing ultimate perfection, but just getting the right feel would be the kind of the way to go. I mean, what kind of mark do you think he made on the original mix? I mean, do you think it sounds clearer, or what kind of things do you think he added to it when you listen back to the tapes for the first time?
I think that's a very hard question.
Because if we'd been thinking correctly, we wouldn't have changed it. So obviously we didn't listen to it with the right ear. I think we got what we went there for.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we set about right away changing things, and which you can get to when...
If you listen to Big Jet playing on this original Memphis recordings, you can hear Tom Dowd's work, very clearly. It's a very sophisticated arrangement. The song just builds and builds and builds. And you know, that's
And
that's
he would
Tom, you
make
know.
up the backing vocals. He would sing what they should. He would pick the words that they should repeat, and you know the really sophisticated stuff that we couldn't do that's in there, that we I suppose took out in the end. Was his work, you know, from his years of just knowing how to craft a record. You know. Great.
Well, you also work with the Memphis Horns. You work with the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, as you said before. Roger and David on bass and Roger Hawkins on drums. And you worked in the legendary Ardent Studios, which had seen so many great musicians pass through there, even like rock acts from like Led Zeppelin and Allman Brothers, Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I mean, it's just a really also big stars, Sam and Dave, I mean, Isaac Hayes, staple singers, Al Green. And the list of all these people kind of work with, whether it was Tom Dowd or whether it was Muscle Shoals rhythm section or the Memphis Horns. I mean, they're quite incredible musicians. Was it ever daunting to you? I mean, you mentioned Dusty in Memphis before, and Dusty went to record her classic album, Dusty in Memphis, at American Sound Studios in 1969 or 68. She recorded it. And she was with Arif Mardin, Jerry Wexler, Tom Dowd, and she was paralyzed with fear because, you know, Aretha Franklin had stood there, and now she's got to sit there and sing. Did you ever have feelings of like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? Can we pull this off?
Every day, probably.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't so much have fear as I found it really hard to play with Roger and David for the first couple of weeks when we were rehearsing in London.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Because I'd never played with a great drummer.
Yeah.
You know, and it's quite hard to. I played with loads of okay indie drummers, but when you're playing with, you know,
It's very kind. too kind.
but they do, you know, it's a whole different level when you're playing. These guys are that. It's just hard finding the, you know, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4 along with the record, it's different with every drummer. Mm-hmm. It just be fractions of milliseconds. It's slightly different, and every drummer's different. But when you get to that level, it's even more so because it doesn't really speed up or slow down or go out of time. These guys are.
And the indie swing scene wasn't much, was it? In 1987, the indie swing scene. There wasn't one basically.
No, there wasn't a good drummer.
But when you're working with these
1987.
the indie swing scene, yeah. But when you're working with when you're in the same room as these people, you know, I mean, you hope that you'll be inspired by them, you know. And you try not to be too scared or too afraid of what they've done, because but all they've done is they've just got on with it, you know. And you just we try, you know. I mean, but you try not to be too threatened, and just and try and learn something from these amazing musicians, you know.
Can I just say that Roger and David were really friendly guys, and I think at first we were a bit in awe when they came to London, but after like a few days, you know, hanging out and playing together, it was like we were all really great friends, and that we were all in it together, you know. There was no divide there, you know. It felt like a kind of gang, you know.
No,
and
I mean, they always,
you know,
totally. I mean, they were always. We were all in the same band. It's not like they were elevated. They were, you know, we were in it together.
Southerners, you know? As well, and the real Southern gentlemen.
It was inspiring.
And they were there to help us, you know, make our record better. So.
Do they have any great stories? Any of these? Did Tom or anyone have any great stories about people they had worked with in the past that you can remember? I'm sure they did.
I asked about Wilson Pickett, and it was either Tom or Roger Hawkins said Pickett never liked the white folks. And I said, I don't blame him.
Yeah, exactly. An American man, yeah.
Because apparently when Wilson Pickett came down to Muscle Shoals to work, he was on Atlantic, and they sent him down to Rick Hall at Fame to cut Mustang Sally or something, and he got off the plane, and the first thing he saw when he got off the steps of the plane, he could see people picking cotton. And Rick Hall met him in the airport, and he said, "I'm going back up to New York City. There's people picking cotton. I'm going to get lynched down here." And then Rick Hall kind of convinced him to stay, and then they were at the studio and they cut. I think it was Mustang Sally. It was one of the big, one of the big hits. But yeah.
Now, you finished this mix with Tom Dowd, but what happened? Why didn't you release that mix?
Well, I can remember. I don't know if these guys can remember anything different, right? Was that we'd worked in the record for 4 or 5 weeks very intensely, playing with high-level musicians and a high-level producer, and we did the best we could. And there's actually in the gatefold sleeve of the original Memphis recordings. There's a photo that was taken, halfway through the recordings, and you want to show it? Yeah. All right, and as you can see, it looks like a team of, like a football team that's going to win the league. We look very confident there, and and you got to believe me, if we didn't think we were making something good, this photograph would never have taken place. Everybody looks like they're having a good time, and. That's a confident bunch of guys, and I think that. So anyway, we worked very hard, and then Tom suggested that he said, "I want to mix for like a week or so, 6 days, and why don't you guys just clear off, get out of Memphis, have a break? You've worked hard." So Martin and Robert went back to Brighton. They were both living in Brighton at the time. Andrew and myself and Murray, who was our roadie guy, went on a road trip to New Orleans. Then we reconvened, I think, a week later, and Martin never made it back because he had an incident in New York.
Should have gone to New Orleans.
So what happened in New York?
I don't know. I think I got abducted by a strange essence.
Son of Sam.
And that's all I know.
And Robert somehow made it back, and he was a bit late. So all I can remember is vaguely sitting in a room with Andrew and Robert, after Tom had played us the mixes, in a side room behind where the receptionist was, and I guess we were talking about what we just heard, Then we went back out and we started making changes.
But what did you think when you first heard it? That mix?
It's so long ago, I can't remember.
Were you happy with it, or?
I wasn't sure. I don't think. I don't know why I wasn't sure. I never kept a diary or anything, but I think none of us were that excited. I think we were. I don't know what we expected.
What had happened to Martin as well. There was a sort of bad atmosphere amongst ourselves at that point. So I think maybe whatever we heard was going to be, we were all pretty negative, and we were fighting with Robert and arguing with him. And
we were arguing with him. Yeah, because I think he nearly died, didn't you?
So,
I don't want to go.
It's quite heavy, right?
I remember the throb. This album is such a beautiful testimony to Robert Young, And I just remember being in on the hospital bed, and he was looking over, and I was fine. He was like, he ended up maybe it freaked him out. I was fine, but maybe it freaked him out. And when he got to Memphis, maybe he was a bit freaked out. Maybe, I don't know.
So that's as much as I can remember. Right. And I don't really remember. The only other memory I have is. I remember thinking maybe there was horns and Jailbird and the intro riff covering Robert's guitar riff, and thinking that's a bit. I don't know if that's I want to hear Robert. I don't want to hear the horns, you know. And the only other thing I can remember is doing a session for Big Jet Plane where we completely re-recorded it. And Martin wasn't there because he's back in England. He had to go see doctors, and we recorded it live on the studio floor with Roger, David, and Jim Dickinson, who produced Sister Lovers for Big Star. So great piano player, played with Dylan, Ry Cooder, incredible guy, incredible character, and that's about as much as I can remember, you know. And I've got a couple of stories from that night, you know. But even then, we weren't sure about that.
No.
You know, I remember we were listening to the playback, and Dowd or somebody said, "What do you think?" And we were like, we wouldn't say not sure, but we never spoke. And I remember Dickinson saying, you know, go home, go back to the hotel, get some sleep, come back in the morning fresh, and you're gonna love it. You know, this is Roger Hawkins doing his Mustang Sally beat. You know, and he was right. You know, we came back the next day, and we really dug what we heard. You know. But in the process, we threw away the version that is on the original Memphis recordings.
Was there a feeling maybe that this is just so far different from Screamadelica that were you ever apprehensive about that? Because it was a completely different musical direction.
I think maybe we thought it was too slick and too much reverb, I remember thinking.
Maybe we thought it was 80s, didn't we? Because it was only like early 90s.
So we wanted to be more 70s, I think.
Yeah, we wanted a bit.
This is what's going through your head. You go, you know, you want to sound like Zeppelin or something, and you're actually sounding a bit too... You know,
too shiny.
It was a bit shiny, maybe. Or maybe a bit too adult as well. You know, but which sounds great now because we're all grown up. And certainly we weren't grown up back then.
In those days, to power was a four-letter word.
So you obviously went back and started. Do you just want to give us a brief kind of account of what happened afterwards? Like you went and started recording with other engineers, and you had George Clinton got involved, and you were just recording different songs.
I think we were just sort of desperate, not to disparage anyone's contributions, because I think George the coolest and did good mixes of the songs he mixed, and you know, so we're not disparaging any effort, but I think in doing what we did, we took away the continuity of the LP. It doesn't sound, you know, it's bits here, you know, some sort of remix there that we slung on it just to get it finished and get it out, and you know, and it sounded like, you know, I guess a bit of a mess in the end.
Alan McGee was normally like a our cheerleader, like you know, he would say, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Go out, release it," you know, and he was always really enthusiastic about stuff, especially around the Screamadelica time. But with these recordings, there was no enthusiasm. He was a bit. I remember him calling me and saying that when we got back to England, saying, you know, I think Dowd's too old. I don't think his ears are what they were. It needs to have more edge. It needs to sound more contemporary. I don't think it's right, you know. And we were a bit like, I don't know. It was a bit, you know. We began to become unsure, you know. And so I guess, Alan always wanted us to work with George Drakoulias. So Andrew flew over to LA, I think.
Let's just let people know he's the one who produced the Black Crows. So great producer.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. George and he was like kind of similar age to us, and he loved the same music that we loved. And we as soon as we met him, we loved him. He was just an amazing guy. And he'd also worked with Rick Rubin, you know, on the Run DMC Aerosmith track, and also with Rick on the Tom Petty Wildflowers albums and stuff. So he was like, you know, he was in good company, you know, and he was, as I say, fantastic music references.
So I always say, when I was talking to him, he said about rocks, I can't make it any better, but I can make it more stupid. And he's right. He made, you know, he took he made it more of a glam rock thing. It kind of sounds more like Slade or something, which is no bad thing. So
And how did he feel about that when you heard that mix? How did he feel about the? You loved it.
Absolutely
yeah.
loved it. I loved it. I was like, oh, this is a hit. You know, we really did want to have a hit record. You know, this is the thing. So it sounded like a hit, and it sounded like a rock and roll song. You know, and that's what we wanted. We wanted to have a high energy rock and roll song that would be a hit, like Alice Cooper's "Schools Out," or a Slade, as Andrew said, something kind of. We wanted to redeem rock and roll. You know, we felt rock had slipped and it wasn't what it had been, and you know, we thought rock and roll was it was it's a glorious art form, and through the 80s it was too corporate, you know, too clean, and lost all of its sex and rebellion, and it wasn't seditious anymore. We wanted to redeem it, and when we heard, the George Drakoulias, the remix of Rocks was incredible, and Jailbird as well, the big hip hop drum beat, it really, really cool, So Alan McGee was also right, he was his commercial instincts were great at that point, and he was right there, because but as Andrew said, I think what we did when we started remixing and we also re-recorded songs like Call Me, and we did crazy stuff like we flew to LA to Ocean Way Studios and recorded Call Me with some LA session drummer when Drakoulias mixed it, and then we took it back to England. We decided we didn't like the drums, so we asked Kenny Jones from the The Faces and The Who to put drums in it at Jacob's studio in Surrey, which was hell, and I just remember it had a really bad time there, and it was crazy because we didn't think the groove that we got in LA was right, so we were trying to get Kenny to play to a track that had the wrong groove anyway. It would never have worked, so it was crazy stuff. We were just all over the place.
I guess when you had like a moment of self-doubt, you kind of put your one foot in one camp and another foot in another camp, and you don't really kind of know what your original intent was in the first place anyways.
I think we were just slinging mud at the wall, hoping something would stick by that point. And it was... I don't really like to be reminded of all this stuff.
Okay, well, one last question.
I've been trying to forget.
But you say that, but I mean, like, we'd be in the clubs like Sabersonic, Andrew Weatherall's club, and he'd play like his incredible records, just blow your mind, and you're like, what the hell is that? And it was Brendan Lynch's remix of Paul Weller's song Cosmos.
I love that mix. It's a
incredible.
Wicked mix.
So then we asked Brenda to remix the track Funky Jam, and which I always thought was going to be like a B-side track, but because George Clinton mixed it, and then which was a really cool mix, and then Brendan did a great psychedelic mix. The two versions ended up on the album. Yeah. So then that was, I kind of lost the atmosphere of the record, because when we went down to Memphis, we had it was mostly ballads. Yeah. And we had 3 high energy rock and roll tracks, and Funky Jam, which was like a kind of B-side, and there was another song, Give Up But Don't Give Up, which wasn't really a song. It was just like a funk jam with no words. So it's like we lost the atmosphere and the kind of direction, the true direction of the record. Then the album that came out in '94 was more schizophrenic,
So that's how you felt about it once it was released?
Yeah, but strange, Some of it I thought was great, and then some of it was like, it was okay, I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird time,
It was also released at a time when Britpop was kind of going. And did you feel that this was something that you weren't, when Screamadelica was released, it was very much that sound was happening, the rave thing, the indie thing together. But when this album came out, it was really kind of the beginning of Britpop. And it was,
never
did you
really
feel
felt much about
but did you
that
feel
thing
like
it's
this,
called Britpop, because
yeah.
it wasn't really, obviously I like pulp, but there wasn't, and like the first Oasis album's great, but it didn't seem to be music with a lot of imagination to me, which the year or two previously with Nirvana and Happy Mondays and the Roses, there seemed to be a bit more imagination. And Acid House Writers, that kind of blew my mind at the Acid House, because you'd have records without singing in it, without any perceptible melody, but they were still great and went on for, 8 or 9 minutes. So I found that this is great. This is modern, imaginative music, and I've thought, guess your Britpop was a bit of a regression.
I guess what I was thinking is more just what the kind of musical landscape your album was entering into rather than personal taste. So it's like maybe it seemed like maybe it was something against the tide as opposed to with it, if that makes sense.
We're always kind of against it, I think.
Yeah.
But that was, like, I think it was Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and then it was the beginnings of Britpop, Like when we were in Memphis, we had MTV on all the time. And it was always just Pearl Jam. It was all the grunge bands.
Beavis and Butthead.
So, yes, Soundgarden and all those guys. Snuff
mean,
the Rooster. It was just like Black Sabbath, kind of sludge rock. And guys with long hair and terrible
The
clothes.
Melvins and everyone, yeah.
Like really, like shorts and his long shorts. And but Nirvana were good, obviously. But it was very white. Like Britpop was white and grunge was white, and we were making a record. It was heavily influenced by black music, and the blues. So it was quite. We were just coming from a different place, I think.
Now, these tapes, you thought they were lost? Or what's the story behind the tapes? Because, Andrew, you found them in your basement recently. What happened?
I've just got a big box of cassettes from about 1986. I mean, when I say a big, it's a massive big box, and I was rummaging about in it, and I just saw the Ardent sleeve, and I looked at it and realised it would give out. But then when I saw the running order, I thought, I wonder if that's Tom's mixes before we messed with him. And like say I don't have a cassette recorder, so I had to send off for a little thing that plugs into your computer. And then I thought, God, we might only have one play at this.
I know, that's what I was going to ask.
So
yeah.
I got it all set up to record into Logic and thought, right, here we go. And played it off, and then made them into MP3s and sent them over.
So you didn't listen to it all together for the first time? You listened to it alone?
No, I just got it. I thought, because maybe this is the only surviving copy.
And it was on cassette and not
It was on
a
a
reel?
cassette. No, it was on a cassette. And then I knew, because I've got a weird brain, that I might not know what happened, but I know what the cassette looks like. So I knew there was a DAT. I knew it was a DAT with an orange dot on it that had, and I've got another big box full of DATs.
So it was a DAT, not a cassette.
No, this is cassette. I
was
found
cassette.
it, but I knew there'd be a DAT somewhere. So I rummaged about my DAT box and I found the DAT with the orange dot on it, and that was it. But it turned out, which is funny, because DAT was meant to be the future of recording, and it turned out that the DAT had degraded over the 20 years and wouldn't
Oh
play.
my gosh.
It was full of clicks, where the cassette was fine.
Wow.
So there you go. It's,
So you actually mastered from the cassette?
Well, no, then there's another thing. Tom recorded on this time.
I thought it killed music, cassettes.
Tom recorded on this thing called X90, which was 32-track digital that was meant to be the future of music, and it lasted about a year and a half. And I think when Sony Claire was trying to get it, they found the X90 masters, but there's only one machine in the world. Is that right, Claire? There's one machine in the world that still functions. So they had to send the tapes to New York to pull it off this thing called X90 that was going to be the future, that doesn't exist anymore. So it's quite,
Thank God for X9.
I know. But
So what was it like when you first listened back to this cassette and you're listening to yourself from 1993, you're the 1993 version of yourselves? What kind of emotions did you experience?
Well, it was quite, to hear that, because I went straight to Big Jet Plane because I knew I would tell which mixes it was because we'd re-recorded that. And then I just played that and thought, why the fuck did we re-record this? This is so beautiful, and it sounds like a steamy night in Memphis with some longing to go home. And it's exactly what we went there to sound like. But then even when we were still in Memphis, we decided to change it, and you're right away going a bit confused. Why did we?
I think we thought that song could have been a single, so we maybe we put the backbeat all the way through it to try and make it like, you know, a wee bit more rock and roll, you know, like a Flying Burrito Brothers kind of country rocker, because it was taking such a long time to build up with the original Tom Dowd version. I think that's why we re-recorded it.
But what were you feeling, Bobby, when you first heard this? When Martin sent it over to you, were you pleasantly surprised?
Andrew sent me an email. It said, "Look what I found." Is the kind of heading, and I was like, "Oh," and I think Jailbird rocks. I went, "All right, crazy," and then I came down to like Everybody Needs Somebody, and then Robert's guitar playing. It was just, oh my God. I'm like, this is incredible. I honestly never knew this existed. Mm-hmm. You know, I really didn't. And then I can't remember the running order, but it was on a big jet plane. Just blew my mind, you know. Mm-hmm. And then Sad and Blue, you know, the beautiful mix with Robert's guitar solo, which he in Memphis decided to destroy. He found this homeless guy in the street. I don't know if he's homeless, but he was he found this guy in the street, and when he was out one night, and he brought the guy back to the studio, said this guy's a blues musician, and I want him to play harmonica on Sad and Blue. So I had the guy play on Sad and Blue. So when Dowd mixed it, it was over Robert's guitars all the way through, beautiful slide guitar, and you know, the breaks between the verses, and then incredible solo, really lyrical and plaintive and gorgeous. And anyway, the version that came out on the 1994 album, it's got harmonica solo, you know, overdriven harmonica, and this was the guy, you know. So Robert had replaced his solo with this guy. And anyway, when Andrew sent me the MP3, I couldn't believe what I was hearing when I heard Robert's solo, you know. I was just like, oh my! I couldn't remember that this had ever happened. I probably had only heard it once or twice, you know. And back then, and I thought it was so beautiful. And I was full of joy.
Yeah. I assume you probably think he would have approved of this as well. What do you think he would have thought about this? Finding these tapes and putting it out.
Probably have turned the harmonica back up. He went back down, Robert.
Well, we're going to have a listen to this album in a few minutes. But I just wanted to ask each of you, like, what's your favorite song on this album and why?
I love Everybody Needs Somebody, Big Jet Plane, where else? Sad and Blue.
And is there anything to listen out for? Any reasons why?
On those songs.
Yeah.
Robert's solo on Big Jet Plane. No, it's a sax solo. His solo on Sad and Blue is just beautiful, and just every other guys, you know, their playing is incredible. They had to play with these incredible musicians, guys, you know, Roger Hawkins, David Hood had played in you know, Respect by Aretha Franklin, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, Aretha, you know, Mustang Sally, Wilson Pickett, I'll Take You There, Respect Yourself, Staple Singers. And these guys were, you know, they play as good as the Muscle Shoals guys. The instrument, you know, the playing's exceptional. So it's the whole album. I just enjoy hearing this band play with those guys and making a beautiful country soul rock and roll record. I don't know. I think it's a very emotional bluesy record, and Robert Young's guitar playing. You know, we never sounded the same afterwards. You know, when this was his last. You know, this was him at his best, and we never really made a bluesy record after this. You know, so it's a real testament to his playing and his soulfulness and just his character. And so to me, that's what it is, and I feel very emotional when I listen to it for those reasons.
Well, I think we're all really excited to listen to it. Guys, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Please give a hand to Bobby, Andrew, and Martin.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.